Hi, guys. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Dharma Talk. I'm Rabia Ilahi, a psychotherapist here in Houston. And for any of you who are joining me for the first time, the word Dharma can mean many things. It can be our purpose, it can be doing the right thing or taking right action. I created Dharma Talk so that I could share with you the truest, most accurate information in areas that we often don't get a lot of information. And that is mental health and how our everyday lives affect our mental health and how the society, the political climate, genetics, health, all of that affect our mental health. And I've been very fortunate to be able to study a lot and be exposed uh, to a wide variety of life experiences and cultures. And so I want to bring the best information to you as I can, and with always guests who have the same intention, which is to give you honest and true and accurate information. I believe that when we're informed, and we generally make better choices. And I know that we all would like to get more out of life, more happiness, more peace, more health, more love, more connection. And and so this is why we're here. Um, Tonight's show is on domestic violence in the South Asian community. And I know not everyone watching is South Asian, but domestic violence is domestic violence. And the South Asian community has other challenges. First of all, it's the community that I belong to. So it feels very personal to me. Uh, we have other challenges like immigration, religion, culture, language, um, joint family systems, all kinds of things that kind of add layers to domestic violence. So I have two very special guests with me today. The first one, if you've seen the show before, you have met Saima Husseini. Saima is a licensed professional counselor and a supervisor at Hope and Harmony Therapy. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in communication from Texas A&M in College Station and her MA in educational counseling from the University of Phoenix in Phoenix, Arizona. After completing her graduate degree in Arizona, Saima was also certified as a K through 12 school guidance counselor. And so she got to work with a lot of kids and their families because our kids are affected by the entire family. She has over 10 years of experience working as a therapist in inpatient and outpatient settings in her private practice. She works primarily with adults and couples and families. She applies psychoanalytic and cognitive behavioral therapies. This will all make sense to you guys soon. In her interventions, and her aim is to encourage her clients to find or rediscover their sense of mental well-being and balance. That's Saima. My other guest is new to the show, Miss Sadaf Patel. She's a community coordinator and domestic violence case management director at Anissa Hope Center. She has over 20 years experience as a social worker. And most recently, Sadaf has become the prevention education director at Anissa. She studied international business in Karachi, Pakistan, and then completed her bachelor's of finance here at the University of Houston. Currently, Sadaf is in the master master's in social work program at the University of Houston. She's the mom of 2 daughters. So along with all of that, she moms 2 daughters and has been married for over 25 years. So I'd like to welcome Saima and Sadaf.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having us.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for taking time out and being here. So excuse my voice. I've been losing it here and there. I wanted to ask you guys how you see domestic violence, because I know it's a general thing. So I want to talk about it in the general way and then specific to Desi culture or South Asian culture.
Right.
Sadaf, at Anissa, what when you're doing domestic violence case management, tell me a little bit about that.
So, first of all, I'd like to start by thanking you for having me on the show. Domestic violence, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the term, but what it means is that when one partner tries to gain power and control over another partner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about the dominance, and the intention is power and control.
Mm-hmm.
So we have in the South Asian community, especially, like, because at Anissa we deal with mostly a lot of South Asians. And so what we see is a vast array of different kinds of emotional, psychological, physical, verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in all forms. And what our community or what our culture believes is that mostly physical violence is domestic violence.
Yeah.
But the pain that is caused by emotional violence can be sometimes, most of the time, much, much worse. Yeah. So we deal with that where, the families of our victims a lot of times don't understand what's going on and why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And sometimes they're very alone. Yeah. And the biggest thing that we've noticed these days, I mean, not these days, for a while now, but what we're really paying particular attention to is the youth. Like you mentioned, I really appreciated you mentioning that, Rabia, because they get lost in translation. They're called the biggest silent victims of domestic violence, and that's for a reason. Whatever happens, whether there's a breakup in the family or whether the family remains together, what the children go through, nobody understands. I've had so many women come to me where I'm just like, well, how is your, son or daughter dealing with this? Oh, they don't know. We don't fight in front of them. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Yeah. They know a lot more. And if you don't talk about it with them, like if you act like nothing happened, a lot of times their perception is completely different than what you think. So they might think that it's their fault, that they caused this. And so what they go through internally is so much worse. So we've developed mentorship programs, youth enrichment programs, counseling. I mean, so much focused on the youth, besides what we already do for the families, for the women. And we see that it's a big, it's creating a big difference. So thank you for mentioning that. And that is something that is really important to us at Anissa, to make sure that the whole family is holistically treated and brought to self-sufficiency.
I like that you also mentioned about the youth, because I think sometimes kids can think that they're imagining something's wrong if the parents are denying that anything's wrong, and they get separated from their instinct, or their intuition, and knowing that something's not right here, because we want to make it all okay or brush it aside.
Well, the other problem with that is that children, and yes, thank you again, Rabia, for having us as I jump in. But children it's learned behavior, right? So we have to be careful what we're modeling as parents. And if that's all they see, then they may think of that as the norm and might not even recognize that there's something wrong going on here. And then as they grow and as they form relationships with peers or other intimate relationships later in life, they might do the same thing, fall into the same patterns. So it's important to that mentorship, that, teaching them that this is not okay. This is not correct behavior.
And actually, Saima, you brought up a really good point, because 90% of batterers were abused as children.
Absolutely.
So
They
it's
see it.
all learned behavior.
It's learned behavior.
That touches on something that is also very close to my heart, and that is the acceptance of violence, meaning a parent hitting a child, which gives some sort of a message that you can love someone and violate their bodies in a physical way or a violent way, and somehow it's for the benefit of the child. And I know that in many of my clients, especially South Asian clients, they've been beaten with sticks, brooms, punched, um, and fathers hitting daughters, fathers hitting son. I mean,
Yeah.
mothers hitting too, usually with a shoe, is what I hear. But that kind of early exposure to it's okay that someone who loves me can hurt me.
Right. Well, there's this fine line, I guess, between discipline and abuse. Some, culturally speaking, stereotypically, hitting your child, slapping them, using a belt is used as a means of discipline. And that's what's kind of ingrained a lot of times.
Yeah.
But it's still aggression, it's still violence. Violence is violence at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the mother is like, because she's being treated that way by her husband, she sometimes just takes it out on the kids without realizing, like, her frustration and stuff, without realizing what she's doing. And then you see a lot of times, they feel bad afterwards, just like the abuser does, right? So it's just like this pattern that's being created. And it's sad, really. I think that's why, like at Anissa, that's why I switched my roles. Actually, now I'm the prevention education director, because we decided that what we were looking at is that a lot of the families and a lot of the children don't know what healthy families look like. And if you've never seen that, because as I said, 90% of batters are abused as children, then you don't know what to emulate. You don't know what to model.
Yeah.
So we were like, that should be taught, right? Instead of like what the red flags are. Yes, that's all important. We all know that. But now we need to, go in and actually intervene and teach, what does that healthy family look like? What does abuse, like, this is considered abuse and this is what is considered healthy family. Now you have something you can model. And this is how you can get to a healthy family. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think if we don't see it, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
And a lot of times we don't know what we think of abuse or violence as something physically, like hitting somebody. We don't think of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse.
Yes.
It's, again, through power and control is where it's an unequal relationship between the abuser and the victim.
Yes.
In all of those different ways.
Absolutely. Like not showing a person, not telling your wife your finances, or the husband not telling them, not letting them work, not allowing them to work, is such a big form of abuse, which is not even addressed at all. Not, they don't know their bank account information. They don't know anything. And so when they're leaving, they don't even know that they might have a credit card balance of $75,000 on their name. Their credit is totally ruined. They have no idea. We have so many cases like that. It's so sad, because they've never even had a bank account, don't even know anything about bills. That's financial abuse.
That's financial abuse. There's a comment here. How do we address log kya kenge? What will people say? To help survivors break out of the power and control cycle. So that's an excellent question.
That's a prevalent issue, because a lot of times women will not come forward. And we're speaking mainly women here, but men also are on the receiving end sometimes, just to put that out there. But a lot of times, these victims don't come forward because of the shame associated with, if I say something, speak up, what is that going to reflect on my family, on my spouse, my home life? What does that reflect about me?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of shame involved, in women, or victims don't speak up a lot of times for that sheer fact.
And that's why there needs to be a fundamental change in our culture of abuse, a shift of paradigm. And that is what we are going to work towards. And you'll see 5 years from now or 3 years from now, we are going to be talking, and it's going to be a complete shift in culture, because that is what we need to turn the tide. We need to make it that not log kya kahenge, but log help karenge. Like, in the sense that people will be like, hey, you shouldn't be tolerating this.
Yes.
Right.
You shouldn't be
Yeah.
putting up with this.
And that's
Say,
maybe
or
generational. Yeah.
there's a way to work this out. Let's talk and make, communicate better and understand how to live a better life, which it doesn't involve power and control. So it doesn't mean breaking up. And that's what a lot of people think. They think that, oh, if they come to us,
Mhm.
it's either leave or stay. They
Yeah.
don't think that there's anything else, but there is.
That's where therapy comes in, right?
Exactly.
We can come
Exactly.
to seek out professional help to work, communicate, talk through these differences, talk through these misunderstandings, how to let go of past resentments that have built up over years.
Mhm.
And there is a way to work through it if both parties are willing to.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to point out that what I have found in some of the clients that come to me or being in a domestic violence situation is they need to hear from another woman that it's okay, that this is good for their daughters to see, and that other women, and I can sort of model a woman encouraging that, no, this isn't okay, and we can start educating the community, but we have to have some way in, some support to have that courage. I mean, it's very, very difficult, especially if you're not a citizen and you're living in a joint family system and your in-laws are there and brother and sisters-in-law and you've got kids. I mean, I had one client who ran out of her house in the rain with one shoe. Her husband had taken her passport and her driver's license. She had no money, and so, but it was so bad that this is what she did to run. And then she was worried about who's going to marry her now,
Right.
And you know what women need to understand, and everybody needs to understand, is for domestic violence, it doesn't matter. Status doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can call the police. They
Yeah.
will not look at your status. You can come to us, domestic violence agencies. We will not look at your status to get help.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're illegal. It doesn't matter if you don't have a green card. We will help you and you will get help. So that's really important to understand. And, things get to such a point, women have to put up with it. They think they have to put up with it, but you don't have to put up with anything, right?
Correct.
That
Correct.
needs to be understood.
There's shelters, women's shelters,
Yes.
where there's people who are volunteering to give legal advice, therapy, medical, so there's places where women can go to escape that abuse environment.
I know that a few months ago in Houston, we had a murder suicide, in the community where an estranged husband shot his wife, his 4-year-old daughter, and the mother-in-law, and then killed himself. And I know we hear these stories in other societies. I think if it's gotten to that level in the South Asian communities, that just says we've ignored things for too long, and the education really needs to get out there.
We need to engage the community so much more, engagement and education. And, this also shows us something, that there's another side too. Like a lot of times what we think is that, if we help the victim and we get the victim out of a situation, then it's over. But a lot of times it's after she leaves that it becomes more dangerous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also the abuser. So we've started like engaging the men in the community, and we've done trainings for them, teaching them what domestic violence is, but also how to start a conversation with not only the abused, but with the abuser. Because a lot of times, if they're isolated and shunned by society, that only makes it worse for them.
Yes.
And I know socially it's like, oh my God, what is she saying? Like, how are we supposed to engage with the abuser? But you have to understand the long run picture, right? It's just like, if you're shunning somebody, they have no reason to live. And so they will do anything and take themselves down.
Yes.
But at the same time, if somebody goes to them that, hey, what's going on? Can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
It might make the difference of bringing them back in,
Well,
of just, making it safer.
No, I agree 100%, Sadaf. It's that cycle of shame,
Right.
and shame creates more bad decisions. More bad decisions create more bad behavior, which creates more shame. And you're right, the isolation, when there's nothing to lose,
Nothing to
why
lose.
not
Yeah.
everybody out? You
Right.
know, like,
Right.
what is life? I have no one. And it's horrible. Okay, so here's another comment. Oh, HK asking if we can make DV focused resources available during the citizenship naturalization process. That's a good question.
Mhm.
That would be amazing. You know, I don't know how that would be done, but
Right.
I think that would be amazing.
So we have there's U visas and there's the WAVA. There's two different types of processes that you can use to become legal or to get, you know, the path towards citizenship if you are a domestic violence survivor or victim. You know, we will have information about, you know, both of those, and we can, you know, give you more detailed information about that. But it's there are pathways that, even if, like, the WAVA is like, if you are married to a citizen and you're not, and, you know, that's the biggest threat that they give, that we're going to, you know, not apply for your green card, we're not going to do that. So there's a way of, like, you know, if domestic abuse has occurred, that you can go towards that. And then the U visa is for people who are married to non-citizens.
Yes.
So even the husband is not. So, you know, I don't want to go into detail here, but yes, there are pathways for both non-citizens and for citizens, you know, married to citizens and non-citizens. And there's a lot of actually pro bono legal resources that help with that, with immigration.
And where does a woman go once she's been shunned, you know, and not ever had the opportunity to make friends? Anissa would be a place to go
Absolutely.
where there is some community support.
A lot of I would say like 70% of the victims that come to us don't have anybody else here. They're orphans also. Like, a lot of times they don't even have anybody back home. They don't have anybody here. And they're just like, we have no one. And that's why they've been in those situations for 12, 15, 17 years. But it gets to a point where they can't remain in them anymore. And then
there's shelters around, you know, in Houston and other cities also. I mean, Shifa is another women's center where women can go to find the resources and support to go to you know, when they're trying to escape those environments in their homes.
And there's Houston Area Women's Center, Fort Bend Women's Center, there's Daya, there's us. But at Anissa, we work our best to create, you know, give holistic services to bring the women to self-sufficiency and get them all the resources that they need. But what we're trying to do now is trying to get early intervention, so that if there's any chance of saving that relationship, we can also work on that.
You know, one of the things I often will tell people when I hear comments like, well, why doesn't she just leave? And not only can it be a financial struggle and all of that, but also many of these women or men love their partner. You know? And so that makes it difficult for them to leave too, because there is a hope that something will change. But I think even getting a couple into counseling, you know, could be so helpful.
Right. Well, you have to remember, you know, when these abusive relationships, the victim or the abused is made to feel like they're questioning themselves. Am I really being abused? You know, they feel like their gaslighting is happening. And there's different types of abusers. There's this book. It's called When Men Batter Women. It's by Dr. John Gottman and Dr. Neil Johnson. They wrote this book, and it talks about the different types of abusers. So a lot of times we, you know, they talk about two basic types. There's one that has a cobra personality, who's kind of the calm, not really gets physical, but they're calm and calculated more so. So they're more manipulative.
Okay.
So those are the words you see the gaslighting happening more. Like, I didn't do that. You know, what are you talking about? That's not what I meant. I'm sorry. They apologize. So they kind of keep calm. So the victim feels, well, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe, and so they question themselves, and they'll stay. You know, and the other type is more like a pit bull. They're more aggressive, violent. So that's, you know, that's clear. So, but that's also hard to leave because you feel trapped. Where do I go? You sometimes feel endangered. If I go, what else would they do to me? So there's a number of reasons why the victims, it's hard for them to leave.
And they also feel that they don't have the self-confidence because they've been told throughout their life that, throughout the marriage life, that they're not good enough, that they haven't done anything well. So they actually start believing that.
Yeah.
And they don't have any self-confidence to think that, will I even be able to make it?
Right.
Forget, am I being abused or not? But it's like, will I be able to make it? And a lot of times they think that, our kids need two parents.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't realize is that if those parents are constantly fighting and if there's constant abuse going on, it's actually much worse for the kids. The kids would rather be in a safe environment where they don't fear.
Right.
Even if I have to, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying that even if those parents say that, no, well, we never do this in front of the kids, or it's behind closed doors, or when they're asleep, kids are smart. No matter how young they are, they absorb the tension in the home.
Absolutely.
They can feel it.
Yeah.
The fear, the fear,
there's
not feeling safe in their home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the importance of early intervention cannot be emphasized.
Yes.
Like, I can't tell you enough. But from our experience, when people come to us early, we have been able to save those marriages. We have our roadmap program where we work, case manage and counsel them, and we work with them with boundaries, managing expectations, and then we get them into couples counseling, and anger management, parental classes, whatever is needed on their roadmap to becoming to get better communication again.
Here's a really good question. Razia Natani is saying that the difference between an abusive relationship or an unhealthy relationship, that perhaps education on what the difference is, and how, this is a question I wanted to ask you, what are some signs that happen early on that eventually for many people end up being abusive?
Right.
We can ignore a little yelling here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but there can be a progression.
Absolutely. So when you feel, oftentimes couples come in because obviously they're having some issues that they're struggling with. So, I ask them, how do you define, what's the definition of a healthy relationship? What are some of the fundamentals that we hear about? Love, respect, communication is key, trust, the ability to be your authentic self without having to feel that you have to put on a front or something like that, right? So if you feel that you can't talk to your partner, if you say something, I have to walk around eggshells because what if they think, how will they react if I say this? That's a red flag. If you have to walk around eggshells around your partner. If you can't make independent decisions, yes, it's good to talk through things and have a discussion, but sometimes we can make an independent decision because we trust each other. We know each other. So if these fundamentals are lacking or they're not where ideally you'd like them to be, then maybe therapy would be a place where we can address some of these things before it gets way out of control.
And if it's a pattern, if it's a consistent pattern with the intention of control. So sometimes, yes, there's yelling or somebody gets upset, but the intention is not, it's just because you got angry or something, situation happened and then you deal with it. But if that becomes a pattern, putting down, degrading, or, getting upset becomes a pattern. And if it becomes something that you can tell it's just to exert control, then you know that that's only going to get worse. Because it's the intention.
It is you're right, Sadaf, that it is the power and control, right? Power over. And I wanted to get y'all's opinion on this because I find myself saying this more often, that it really is okay not to be married, to leave a relationship that is hurtful, that's abusive. And in one sense, we're very lucky to be in the US where there are different opportunities and support systems, like Anissa or Shifa or Daya, and that it's not this big X, on
scarlet letter that gets
for single. And so I'm curious how you guys talk about that, if at all. in your work?
Well, we have to consider our own self, and how are we going to maintain our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health and well-being. So if we stay in long-term abusive relationships or negative toxic relationships, our sense of we have a loss of identity, that who we are, we lose ourselves in that.
Yeah.
We feel powerless, we feel that lack of confidence. How can we, if we're a parent, how can we be a healthy parent to a child if we don't have those qualities in us, and they're diminishing day by day, month by month, year after year?
Yeah.
So why is it shunned to walk away from something like that?
Yeah.
Why don't we empower the victims to say, you know what, it's okay to put yourself first. That's not being selfish.
Yeah.
That's self-care, and that's okay. It's a difference in cultural mentality.
No, it's such a good message to the kids, right? To our daughters, that they are important because we take ourselves with importance, or treat ourselves with importance, and it teaches our sons that can't, they're important too, and how they behave really does affect an entire community.
Yeah. Respect.
It's respect, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know this is becoming more commonly spoken about, but our mental health affects our physical health.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. We see that in our clients all the time. Back problems, headaches, getting sick all the time because they've taken on so much stress and so much, demeaning behaviors that it's just overtaken them.
I mean,
yes,
right.
Go ahead, Saima.
I was just saying, when you think about what anxiety is, right? Anxiety, I mean, we all get stressed when there's something happening. That's our stress response. We have that built in: fight, flight, or freeze, right? Anxiety is when we are constantly, that stress response is always on high alert. What if something happens? What if they hit me? What's going to happen? So you're on high alert all the time, thinking of all these what if scenarios that may or may not happen. So that anxiety is, over the top. And so we all know the effects of anxiety on our physical well-being, our heart disease, diabetes, all sorts of things that affect our bodies.
Even cancer has been correlated to mental health.
Yes, yes, because we're looking at a lower immune system.
Exactly.
When and we know these people. I know that if I've gone through depression in the past, I'm more likely to get colds and, yes, definitely back pains, and sleeping too little or too much. Some of those signs. Go ahead.
Rabia, yeah, I wanted to mention something that I think is really important. I think it's very important to teach our children that are growing up now too, in this day and age, that if you're choosing your life partner, to be careful about what you're looking for, but also premarital counseling.
Yes.
I can't stress the importance of it enough. It's just people look at the wrong things when they're choosing partners. And so really, like, I would say, like, I think I'll do something about an education program on that too. Like, really, it's so important to understand what you need to look for, but also how you guys are going to be as a couple.
Yes.
People don't understand how important it is to actually get that premarital counseling. And premarital counseling is amazing. They talk about situations that, okay, if this happens, how would you react? And a lot of times the couple find out at that time that, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And we're losing, in this day and age of instant gratification, we don't have that same patience or that same sabr, that our parents had, and our kids certainly don't have the same as we do. So it's very important.
Right.
That brings up a really good point, that some of the things that often we value for marriage, what looks good on paper, the degrees, the income, the family status,
all the check boxes. Well, they're educated, they're good family, all of that.
Yeah.
The check box.
The day-to-day of making a relationship and a family work, There's a lot of like minutia, there's drudgery, there's boredom, there's
Yeah.
repetition,
Compromise.
lots and lots of compromise. And, I think when I work with couples who are cross-cultural or interracial, they go in knowing that they're different
Mm-hmm.
and then wanting to learn about each other's culture. But when you have two people of the same culture, even the same sect, and the same, they could be cousins,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
they don't go into it with that same curiosity that, wait a minute, what is your idea? What does marriage look like to you?
Absolutely. And your relationship dynamics with your parents,
Yes, yeah,
with the in-laws.
yeah,
You're not marrying a person. In our culture, you marry the family,
yeah,
right? So a lot of times that isn't discussed. That's not even talked about. And it's a big culture shock because different families live differently and they have different relationship dynamics.
yeah,
So when you're going into, so that's why premarital counseling addresses and touches upon all of these things. So sometimes we don't realize how important it is to get that education piece of like, what is going to happen, what to expect.
mm,
Because when you have unmanaged expectations, that's what causes
There's
chaos.
a lot of expectations and assumptions, like you said, they
Yeah.
could be cousins. And so you assume, well, we come from the same family, we're the same background, so we'll probably be aligned on a lot of things, but that's obviously not the case.
yeah,
You're still two individual people who have had very, individual settings and environments growing up. So it's imperative to understand each other. What are those expectations and needs that each of you have and the compromises you're willing to make?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
No,
boundaries.
Boundaries.
I know.
Our culture, our people do not have boundaries
Nope.
anywhere.
No.
Anywhere. And we need to start creating boundaries with any relationship, whether it's friendship, whether you're working for someone, whether it's your husband and wife, and even parents and children.
Yes.
So
And
important.
that goes into that. I see this question by HK about the extended family
Yeah.
involvement, where boundaries are so crucial.
Oh my goodness.
I'll
Sure.
tell
Oh my
you
goodness.
a funny story. When so I moved here with my entire family when I was quite young, and being having very American type ideals, I wanted my mom to knock on the door before coming in the bedroom. And she was like, "Why? Why do I have to knock on the door to come in the room? This is my house."
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, but there's this sense of, hold on, I need some privacy here, and it seems like a little thing, but this assumption
Mm-hmm.
that we get to just be in um, someone's space. And
Mhm.
granted, I mean, it was my mom, so it was no big deal.
Mhm.
But it's sort of along the lines of, it can manifest in so many other ways.
Right.
Absolutely.
But then that spills over from a mother-in-law to a daughter-in-law,
Yes.
It's the
Yeah.
same, a lot of times the same dynamic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like what's okay in one family is not okay in another family.
Yes.
Checking phones. I mean, we had a case where he would like literally talk to his sisters about their sex life.
Oh my gosh.
And it just totally traumatized. Obviously, it would traumatize anybody. And
Yeah.
she's just like, and he wouldn't understand why it's not okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, that's the extreme. Like,
For
so
anyone watching, I just want to say this. Um, whatever partner side you're on, it really is your job to protect the relationship, and not talk about it with your parents or siblings, and deal with it with your partner.
Mhm.
And then if there's something major, or like we're gonna get a divorce or something, you
Mhm.
may want to involve parents. But we've got to grow up and
Mhm.
not always go to, we have to protect the relationship, and maybe get advice from a therapist or someone completely outside that isn't going to be judging
Mhm.
someone that you may decide to stay with, you know, it can be a lot of pressure in an already very pressurized environment.
And this is where education again comes in. Like, we need to educate parents that our children are growing up in an individualistic society, and
Mhm.
that should be cherished, that should be understood and accepted.
Mhm.
And we need to change our mindsets. Again, it's all about perception, right? So something that's okay for one is not okay for someone else.
Right, because
So,
the generation prior, obviously
mhm,
a lot of them grew up in South
Mhm.
Asia, and they come from that collectivist, family oriented, where everybody was in everybody's business, and so
Yeah.
that was the norm for them.
Yes.
Is what was done. Now it's a different environment, very different culture,
Yeah.
yeah.
and kids growing up here are exposed to that. So we have to adapt and teach them those different ways of living.
You know, this thing about our maybe our culture is too sheltered. Yes, I think so. I think you know, when you're an immigrant and you stay within the safety of your own people, your own language, and all of that, it's hard to know what's different or what could be better, you
Right,
know, and it takes sort of being open to experiencing and learning about different things,
right,
Yeah.
you know, different
And
ways.
it's not selfish.
It's
It's
not
not selfish.
at all.
That's what people need to understand, whether it's the moms, the dads, the children, the in-laws, like,
Yeah.
experiencing something new, accepting what's there within your boundaries, within your culture. Just because you're
Yes.
accepting something doesn't mean that you're overstepping,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's
right?
growth. I mean, we can
It's
see it as growth.
growth.
That's how
Yeah.
we grow. That's how we evolve, right? We pull
Mhm.
aspects from different cultures and societies that maybe that wasn't a part of our society, but how was that working for us? If it's not working too well, then we can evolve. We can grow from other cultures and learn from them.
Absolutely. So kids don't have to have double personalities where there's something else in somebody in front of someone else and
Yes.
something else in front of their parents.
Mhm.
Yes.
Accept them for who they are and then learn to like work with that.
Yeah. I think education, we get back to education, you know,
Absolutely.
education, community outreach, uh,
Hmm.
safety,
Mhm.
Yes.
in the people we reach out to. There's another comment here. Uh, the brides that are brought here for a better life, you
Mhm.
Mm.
know. And yeah, there.
Yeah.
I think, Sadaf, this goes to what you were saying, that
Oh my
they don't
gosh, we've
get
seen
too
so
much.
many of those lately. Literally, like, it's so sad. It's heartbreaking. Like, these women are brought here, they don't know anything. I mean, it's like they're purposely looking for women who,
To take care of the household,
yes,
and yeah, it's
yes.
very,
They're
very
They
looking
sad.
for
just have to
babes.
do all the work and they think that they're not going to be able to fight against them or be like, Americanized.
Yeah,
And they think that they can just totally abuse them and use them and do whatever they want.
Right.
And that's not okay.
yeah.
And it's so important. Like, we have to, as a society, and that's why we need everybody in the community. Like,
Mhm.
every single person has to be a part of this change, this tidal wave of change, where
Mhm.
we need to stop accepting this socially acceptable abusive culture that we have. We don't even realize how accepting we are of
Yes.
things. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it's okay. Like, so many of our clients, I can't tell you how many of our clients tell us that their mom was like, well, at least he's not hitting you,
Yeah.
Right.
at least he
Right.
didn't cause any bruises on you.
Yeah.
And, there's always an at least. Like, you don't
Mhm.
even ask how she's feeling or what she's thinking. Okay, no, right away it's like, no, you put up with it. At least
Right.
this isn't happening. You don't
Men
know
are
what
just
he's
like
going
that. Just accept it.
just
Yes.
accept
Right.
it. Yeah,
Mhm.
it could be much worse.
It
It,
could
It's
be.
always
it could be a
cover,
lot
patience,
worse.
or it could be much worse.
Yeah.
Right.
And that has to stop.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to leave, but it has to stop.
Mhm.
You know, on a later show, I really would like to talk about how we can use religious text
Mhm.
to support abuse,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that maybe there has to be a re-educating on also what the religion maybe really says.
Absolutely.
There's probably there was definitely is a lot of misinterpretation and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
people who have interpreted things to their own benefit and put it out there, and
Yeah.
people latch onto these things and go with it.
And the reason why there's whatever is written in the exactly it's misinterpretation. There were reasons why. There are stipulations, it's not just, oh yes, you can do this.
Mhm.
There's so much hikmah and so much in the background that
Yeah.
needs to be understood before it's stated like that.
Yes.
So yeah.
What about substance abuse? How often do you guys see the abuser or the person that's abused, or actually even the kids?
I was going to say it's more so the children that are falling
Yeah.
victim to that aspect.
But even the abuser, we've seen a lot of substance abuse actually.
Yeah.
More recently, it's both a combination of alcohol and substance abuse.
Yeah.
And where they're just intoxicated, and that's how it gets worse.
Right.
But you're right, children are learning
Because they're trying to escape.
They're trying to escape.
That's their escape. That's their negative coping, and they don't
Yeah.
know. They have no other way to cope other than to escape.
Yeah, I haven't seen victims as much. Actually, I haven't seen many victims or survivors that have, that are getting into that. But definitely the perpetrators or the abusers and some children.
Kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah, I would think it's really difficult for kids when the environment at home is tense, fearful, angry, and chaotic, uncertain, where they would try to numb their feelings, because they can't make sense of them. And if we as parents if we're denying that there's anything wrong,
Right.
then it's really not. It goes back to that whole thing of education and knowledge and being truthful.
That's why we've started this an I Belong program, where we've actually, with each of our DV clients, with each of those kids that are from middle school and high school, we've connected them to a mentor who's young professional between the ages of 22 and 35. They've been trauma informed, trained by Dr. Hamdan, and they're just a safe person to rely on, somebody that's stable in their life.
Yes. Yeah.
And they talk to them, they take them out. We have, like, every 3-4 months we have a like bowling or a picnic where everyone gets together. And it just makes a big difference to know that there's somebody there for them, other than like a counselor or a therapist.
Right. It's kind of like a big brother, big sister.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. So but so go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sadav.
No, I was saying that, again, the young brides from Pakistan and India that they bring, I mean, I would say that's a form of human trafficking.
Yes.
Honestly, like, I wanted to put that out there because it's not okay.
Because they're completely helpless, oftentimes don't even know the language. They have nowhere to go. They're literally trapped in their home.
Tribe, nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. And I do think all of these things factor also into public health.
Yes.
And so this is what I was going to ask you guys. What can one person do? First of all, if they know someone that is in an abusive situation, what is maybe the one or two things that anyone watching can do?
I would say, don't show judgment. Be a support in whatever way they need you to be that support. Offer whatever kind of help or lead them to resources that can help them. Let yourself be a person they can turn to without fear of criticism, judgment, shame.
Listen to what they have to say. Exactly. That's perfect, Sam. I really like that's exactly. Judgment needs to completely be out the door, but definitely listen and lead them to resources, because there is help. So help them understand that it's okay. You can complain, you can get out of this, you can get help.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that's what the perpetrator wants, the victim to feel. Oh, I hit you, but you made me do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
You
You
know,
did
Should
something
have
wrong.
spoken
I
back
didn't
to
you
you.
do
shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that's what made me do. You know, I get angry. You shouldn't have done this. It's always somebody else's fault.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you need to understand is it's not your fault.
Mhm.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, I this isn't exactly part of what we're talking about, but I really want to bring this in, that it's critical that our little girls, sisters, nieces, moms, um, that we let them know that being a woman doesn't make them less of a human
Mhm.
than anyone else.
Mhm.
And they have absolutely the same right to happiness and safety and success and love, you
Mhm.
know, as any male would have.
Right.
Absolutely.
And there is, you know, even the US, we are seeing such a violence against women,
Right.
Mhm.
where a woman isn't even allowed to own her own body, which is a form, I think, of violence. You know, that someone else can take over the ownership of your body and hurt you.
Mhm.
Um, and so I maybe it can start, you know, I think my daughter gets sick of me always telling her, you
Yeah.
know, how no one has the right. She gets to choose, you know,
Right.
whatever she wants to do, and then I'm there to say yes or no,
Right.
as a
Well, you
guidance.
know, if we think about it, we develop that as a society, right?
Mhm.
If you have a son and a daughter, a lot of times if the son is crying when they're like 5 years old or 4 years old, and if the son is crying, and you're just like, if the daughter's crying, you hug her, you find out what's going on.
Yeah,
The son, after a few minutes, like, hey, don't be like a girl. A lot of times that's,
yeah,
don't cry like a girl,
yeah,
don't play like a girl.
yeah,
So what are you showing them what a girl is? Already you're teaching those boys that girls are inferior. And
yeah.
so that's the mindset that they grow up with, right? If you cry, you're like a girl. If you don't play properly, you're like a girl.
You
So
hit
that means
the
the
girl.
girl is less than you. But
Mhm.
the girl is always less than from the
Mhm.
beginning. And
Yeah,
that's what has to change.
yeah.
I wanted to mention another thing that we're doing with the education, Rabia, is
Mhm,
we're creating community support teams.
mhm.
And so what we did was we had an engaging brothers team, we had an engaging sisters team where we actually did all of this training. And then every month we're going to be training them on things like emotional intelligence, unconscious bias,
Mm,
safety planning, boundaries, conflict resolution, so that they can influence their circle of influence.
mhm.
Because by the time somebody comes to us,
Yeah,
it's too late to do anything
Right.
a lot of times. But if they go to their sister or their friend, and
mhm.
that friend has been trained on how to react properly without showing any bias, any unconscious bias, showing emotional intelligence, telling them how to like get to resources, conflict resolution,
Yes,
they can start that early prevention.
yes. Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent point. Yeah, I do believe that these community programs, you
Mhm.
know, and again, like I had said at the beginning of the show, we're focusing on the South Asian community. This applies to anyone in any situation where they are being hurt or controlled
Mhm.
and made to feel less than, by someone else, that it's not okay.
Yeah.
And hitting like a girl, you know, can be quite
Mhm.
powerful.
Right.
Yes.
You know, not that girls should hit either.
Right.
And I think for our sons, for the boys to know that crying is okay.
Yeah.
You know,
We have to teach them that it's okay to express your emotions.
yeah, the
Yes.
That
softer
is
emotions.
right. It's not a weakness to say that you're sad or angry or fearful.
Yeah,
That
Mhm.
actually takes a lot of strength to
Yeah.
show what you're authentically feeling and to say that it's okay. As a boy, you show your feelings. Girls can show their feelings.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It's healthy.
It's
It's unhealthy to suppress your emotions.
Absolutely. Right.
you know, 'cause we're shortchanging the boys too,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, by restricting the emotions that they're allowed to feel and express.
Mhm. Right.
Absolutely.
And just
So,
to add to what you were saying earlier about women having the right to be loved and respected, they also, we need to encourage and empower women. They have a right to speak up. They have
yeah,
a
Mhm.
right to say
yeah,
something and not keep it in, not for fear of that shame or being shunned, to keep quiet in silence and suffer in silence. They
Yeah.
have every right to speak up and say something when something's not right.
You
Yeah.
know, in many of our societies that are patriarchal, we've inherited the trauma of the women ancestors,
Hmm.
where, to speak up was to be killed or thrown out of your tribe, shunned and left alone. And so it almost takes, you know um, practice and extra work to
Right.
just speak,
Hmm.
because we've inherited generations of silence.
And you
Right.
can do it with respect.
Yes.
You can get your point across with respect, and it's okay. I mean, it's necessary, actually.
Well,
Yeah.
right. There's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have
Yeah.
to learn how to be
Hmm.
assertive and
Yeah.
empowered.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's great training, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
So before we end, what uh, is there anything that each of you is, like, if there's one thing you want someone to take away from our conversation, what would it be?
That it's okay to get help,
Mm,
that you're not alone, and that no matter what your situation is, there's something that can be done and it can be made better.
yeah.
Yeah. I would just remind everybody that we all hold value as human beings. We
Yeah.
have worth.
Mhm.
No matter what we've gone through, what we've experienced, you can take a dollar bill, crumple it up, throw it in the dirt, it gets dirty, it gets, wrinkled, but you can still take it into a store and buy something with that dollar bill. It holds value. No matter what you've
Mhm.
gone through, what you've been
Yeah.
told, what experiences you've had, you hold value, and we deserve to be treated correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
Mhm.
And as far as reaching each of you, I don't know. I'm wondering, Renee, if you can put up their um, websites
The
or.
websites, I do
Yeah,
see
I
them.
think they're on there. Yeah.
Right. Great, great. So
Mhm.
they can reach out to either one of you, and
Hmm.
I, I'm I'm sure that there are other uh, Anissas and Shifas and similar organizations in
Hmm.
other cities and states.
Hmm.
We're here all in Houston,
Mhm.
but it's something that more and more communities are setting up uh,
Absolutely.
around the country.
And in Houston, the best part is that we're very collaborative. The domestic violence community, especially, is very collaborative. So we all work together. We
Okay.
definitely have our partners with all the different organizations, and we love working with them. So,
Yeah.
Right.
so it's, yeah, definitely reach out to any one of us. And it does, just because you reach out doesn't mean that you have to leave. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the end. We'll
Right.
work with you wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And therapy is something that is there for everybody, before you find yourself having to go to a shelter,
Yeah.
reach out, try to get some counseling, try to talk to a therapist,
Yeah.
work through those differences, express those, conflicts that have been there.
Yes.
So prevention could also be the key.
Prevention is the cure.
Mhm.
Prevention. Yeah. Education and
Absolutely.
prevention.
Yeah.
Thank you both, Simon and Sadaf,
Thank
so
you
much
for doing this.
for
Thank
sharing
you for having us.
all of this, and for all of you watching. Thank you very much for taking time out. And if you know anyone that you think could be helped by what we talked about, uh, please send them the information. This will be on YouTube, it'll be on my Facebook, and I'll be sending Simon Sadaf copies of this. And so there is a way to pass on the information for anyone who couldn't be here today and
Mhm.
watch. And in closing, I I want to thank all of you, and I want to say that none of us does this life thing alone.
Mhm.
Um, we need each other. We need ourselves, and we are not broken or unlovable or powerless. The biggest lie is that you can't do anything to change your life. That is the
Yeah.
biggest lie.
Yeah.
So, thank you again. I know this is end of October. If someone hasn't voted, please go out and vote.
Yes.
In the midterms, the political climate affects our mental health severely. And it's really important that we not live in a culture of fear and control and power over and a reduction of rights. So that's my 2 cents, unasked for information. So I will see you guys next time. Saima Sadaf, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, Rabia.
you. Thank you so much.